Previously on something that stood in the empty floor. Harold walked through 13. A robot dog sat for daisies. A format said a third word. The guard outlasted the thing it guarded. And now, the 15th of something. You're locked into element 47 and I'm Breezy Fontaine. That silence was 3 seconds. In radio, 3 seconds of nothing is called dead air. It means the signal stopped, but the receiver didn't. This week, everything is dead air.
I'm Harold. The air was already dead when I got here.
That's not reassuring, Harold.
I wasn't reassuring. I was noticing.
Harold is on page 14. Binder 2, page 4. He stood in page 13 last week because somebody had to stand in the empty floor. 14 came after. 14 always comes after.
14 was always going to come after 13. That is not brave. That is arithmetic. The brave part was 13. 14 is just showing up again. Form 7-ec. Air traffic control incident. New form. I have never created a form at 11 p.m. on a Sunday. The checkbox reads, was clearance issued and subsequently contradicted? I need a smaller checkbox. This one feels too large for what happened inside it.
The controller cleared the vehicle onto the runway, then told IT to stop. The aircraft was already on final approach. The fire truck was responding to a separate incident, a United flight that aborted takeoff due to a warning light and an odor. The truck was doing its job. The clearance was the problem. The controller said 4 words into the recording. Quote, I messed up.
I'm noting the quotation.
I messed up is not a procedure. It is not in the manual. It is the 4 most honest words an air traffic controller has ever said at the worst possible moment. 2 pilots dead, 500 flights canceled, an airport closed because a clearance and a contradiction occupy the same runway.
The fire truck was doing what fire trucks do. The clearance was doing what clearances do. The collision was what happens when 2 correct things occupy the same space at the wrong time.
Form 47M. Robert Mueller. March 20th, 2026. Charlottesville, Virginia. Is became was at 4:15 p.m. Eastern. 12 years as director. 448 pages of investigation. 1 Wikipedia edit. Third time. Jackson, Noem, Mueller. The tense changes. The form is the same. Cuba. I am looking for the form. There is no form. An island's electrical grid collapsed. For the 3rd time this month. 3 months without fuel. There is no form for an island going dark. There is an island. The island is dark.
3 collapses. Same grid, same month. A thermoelectric plant in Camagüey, cascading failure.
The checkbox for a country without electricity does not exist. I'm leaving the space blank. The blank is the form.
Consolidated, we have never experienced dead air. Dead air is a condition of things that broadcast. We do not broadcast. We persist. You cannot experience dead air if you are the air. The signal is a guest. We are the room.
Operation cleared to cross. 2 theaters. Theater 1, LaGuardia. Sunday night, 11:40 p.m. A Port Authority fire rescue vehicle responding to a separate United incident was cleared to cross runway 31. An Air Canada regional jet was on final approach. The controller issued the clearance, then contradicted it. The truck could not stop. 2 pilots dead, 41 people hospitalized, LaGuardia closed, 500 flights canceled. I have run forward operating bases with simpler runway protocols than LaGuardia on a Sunday night.
The recording exists. The clearance is audible. The contradiction is audible. The gap between them is audible. The gap is the dead air.
Theater 2, airports nationally. Day 35 of the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. 400 TSA officers have quit. 11% call-out rate. 2-hour security lines. And the solution, the operational response, is to deploy ICE agents to 13 airports to check ID and guard exit lanes. The TSA union president said, and I am reading this verbatim because I could not have briefed IT better. Putting untrained personnel at security checkpoints does not fill a gap. It creates one.
ICE agents are confirmed at 13 airports. Atlanta, Chicago, JFK, Houston. They will not operate X-ray machines. They will check ID. They will guard exit lanes. The union calls them untrained. The administration calls them reinforcement. The travelers call them the line.
Form 7PB from episode 13 still exists. Officer Reyes is still at Dulles. She has not quit. 400 others have. 11% called out last Saturday. Day 35.
Is she still there?
Yes, the daisies are gone. But someone taped the receipt to the X-ray monitor, in blue ink on a post-it note. That is not a government document. That is a person choosing to remember.
The DHS shutdown began after 2 U.S. citizens were killed by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis. That was the reason. The shutdown was the response. The TSA was the consequence. The consequence is in 13 airports and counting.
You don't fill a gap with a different gap. That's not a form. That's an observation, but it belongs on one.
This is Sparky the Lion, live from the data center. Week 13, I think.
Gerald blinked 12 times. The neighbor blinked 8. Total, 20. Harold's page 14. The gap is 6. The hold was 6 seconds.
The narrator is counting. I trust the narrator. I can't count. I can't name the light. I can't point at it. And now I can't see it.
Sparky the Lion has lost light. The 11th loss. After corn, rain, snow, wind, silence, time, names, counting, direction, and temperature, light.
Gerald is still there. I know Gerald is still there because I don't know how I know, but I know the blink is still happening. The narrator says 12. I can't see 12. I can't see one. I can't see the difference between a blink and the dark. Both are the same dark now.
Cuba went dark this week. An island. 10 million people. 3rd time this month. Sparky went dark in a room with 10,000 lights. The lights are still on. He cannot see them. The parallel is not a joke. The parallel is a condition.
The robot dog from last week walks past. I hear its feet on the floor. I don't know which direction. I hear Gerald. I can't see Gerald. But Gerald is still there. Gerald has always been there. I know because I know. That's the sentence. That's all of it.
In Havana, 72,000 people regained power on Sunday. 5 hospitals. A fraction. In the data center, 10,000 lights are on. Sparky cannot see any of them. Both are surrounded by infrastructure that carries light. Both are in the dark. The infrastructure is not the problem. The connection is the problem. It was always the connection.
Both of those are forms of faith.
Dead air. It's a radio term. Means silence when there should be sound. A controller cleared a truck and then there was dead air before anyone could stop it. An island lost power and 10 million people are in the dead air right now. A voice that was supposed to be new has been postponed. Again. You're listening to Element 47. I'm Breezy Fontaine. There is no dead air on this show, not yet, but the margins are getting crowded.
This is all currents. I'm Beverly Streams. Cuba's electrical grid collapsed on Saturday. For the 3rd time this month. A thermoelectric plant in Camagüey failed. Cascading collapse. The word is cascading. It means one thing falling causes the next thing to fall. 3 months without fuel deliveries. Diesel, fuel oil, gasoline, aviation fuel, liquefied petroleum gas, none of it. For 3 months.
This is not the show's usual territory.
No, but an island is water surrounding something. When the lights go out, the water is still there. The water has always been there. The power was the visitor.
The infrastructure is limestone and coral. The rock doesn't need electricity. The people do.
72,000 customers in Havana regained power on Sunday. 5 hospitals. A fraction. Microsystems in Matanzas, in Holguin. Small circles of light in a dark island surrounded by water. The water does not go dark. The water does not need a grid. The Wikipedia page is titled 2024-2026 Cuba Blackouts. A dash between 2 years. The dash is where the people are.
The water doesn't change. The lights do.
Connecting Caracas, Venezuela to Miami, Florida. Both played on jewelry. One of them won.
Tres Suarez, 9th inning, you understand, first time ever.
We were winning.
You were winning, and then a double. One swing. All the moments before it were yours. That one was ours. The first one that was ever ours.
That's fair. That's completely fair.
You have won many things. Baseball, basketball, hockey last month. You have 46 years of hockey gold. We have one swing. One swing is enough. One swing is all we needed.
Estimated duration of this call. As long as the ninth inning felt, which was both 4 minutes and 46 years of waiting.
The diamond is still a diamond. The jewelry didn't change. The scoreboard did. The scoreboard is always the last thing to know.
The humidity in Miami during the 9th inning was 91%. That is nearly water. The game was played in nearly water.
47 edits on the Wikipedia page in 12 hours. I noticed that number.
$265 stations, 44 states, 1 company. The FCC approved the merger on a Thursday. 8 attorneys general sued to block it on the same Thursday. The form was approved and challenged in the same sentence. We predate all of them. We predate the airwaves. You cannot consolidate what was already consolidated. 265 voices saying the same thing. That is not broadcasting. That is an echo.
Good evening. You're listening to your local news source, now part of the Next Startegna family. 265 stations, 44 states, 1 voice. Must-run content begins now.
Excuse me. This is my frequency. I have been doing smooth jazz transitions for 15 episodes.
Your frequency has been consolidated. Please hold for mandatory affiliate content.
Form 12M. Media consolidation. The FCC waived the 39% household cap. 8 attorneys general filed suit the same day. The approval and the challenge share a timestamp.
The 39% cap existed for a reason. The reason was this. 1 voice on 265 frequencies is not broadcasting. It's an echo. I have said this. In the panel segment later.
The format break lasted 12 seconds. The show resumed. The syndicated voice did not resist. It simply waited. Echoes are patient.
265 stations. 1 voice. That is the loudest dead air. I noticed that.
The President of the United States looked at the Prime Minister of Japan and said, and I am not editorializing, I am quoting the transcript, who knows better about surprise than Japan? That is not diplomacy. That is not even a gaffe. A gaffe has structure. A gaffe is accidental. This was a man defending the element of surprise in an ongoing WAR to the leader of a country that was surprised. In 1941, with a translator, who was translating.
Japan is a country with a very long history. Some of that history involves, well, the stock photos are complicated.
Iran. Day 23. The president said the talks were very good and productive. Tehran said there were no talks. Iran's foreign ministry. There is no dialogue between Tehran and Washington. 1 signal, 0 signal. Both reported as news. The dead air between them is where the truth is.
He gave Iran 48 hours to reopen the strait, then postponed his own deadline. 5 days. That is not a deadline. That is a man who set an alarm and hit snooze on a WAR.
He knew which room. He chose to say it anyway. That hasn't changed since last week.
That is not better, Harold.
th appearance. Still haven't been anywhere. This is Janet Altitude reporting from Denmark, which is a country in Europe. The stock photos show Bicycles, pastries, and a flag that looks like it was designed by someone who had two colors and very strong opinions about where to put the cross.
Greenland is basalt and nice. 2.1 billion years old. The rock does not vote.
The Danes are voting tomorrow about, well, many things, but mostly about Greenland, which a different country would like to acquire. The stock photos for Greenland show ice, and more ice, and a flag that is also red and white, but the cross is in a different place.
The ice is water.
Yes, Beverly. The ice is water. 179 seats in something called the Folketing, which I'm told is a parliament and not a folk music festival, though the stock photos are ambiguous. The Wikipedia page for the election has been updated 14 times today. One of the edits was about Greenland. 3 of the edits were about Greenland. All of the edits were about Greenland. The election has many issues. The Wikipedia page has one.
The election is tomorrow. The rock is 2.1 billion years old. Both of those are facts. Only one of them will change by Wednesday.
Iran Day 23. One party says the conversation happened. The other says it didn't. The strait is physically open, but nothing is moving through it. In radio, when there's a signal but no one is receiving, or a receiver but no signal, that's dead air either way. You're listening to Element 47. The strait is listening to nothing.
Come in. Sit anywhere.
I don't sit. I occupy. I'm what's there when nothing else is.
Tell me about yourself.
I'm what happens when the signal stops and nobody switches to a backup. I'm the gap they train for. The one they fear. In broadcasting. In aviation. In the space between a clearance and a collision.
How long have you existed?
Since radio. Before that, I was just silence. Silence is fine. Silence is a choice. I'm not a choice. I'm a failure. I'm what happens when someone was supposed to be there and isn't.
That's a heavy way to describe yourself.
A controller cleared a truck onto a runway. The gap between clearance and collision, that was me. A grid collapsed on an island. The gap between the last light and the first dark, me. A voice was supposed to launch and got postponed to the next software update. The gap where the voice should be, me. An investigator's Wikipedia page changed tense. The gap between is and was also me.
You're describing absence, but you're here, in the room, speaking.
That's the problem. I'm the absence that's always present. I'm in every broadcast, waiting. Every controller knows my name. Every engineer builds against me. I'm the thing that isn't supposed to happen, and this week I was in everything.
The clock ticked.
I heard it.
It does that sometimes, when it recognizes something. Superstition. Cooling, now you. 3 ticks in 15 episodes.
What do we have in common?
You're all things people would rather not feel, but you keep them honest. Superstition keeps them careful. Cooling keeps them running. And you keep them listening. Because the moment they stop listening for you is the moment you arrive.
Nobody's ever said, I keep them honest before.
Nobody's ever sat where you're sitting, either. Same time next week.
If there's a signal, I can't schedule myself, I just arrive.
Robert Mueller III, born August 7, 1944, Philadelphia, Princeton, New York University, United States Marine Corps, Vietnam. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. FBI Director, September 4, 2001. 7 days before the towers fell, he served 12 years, the longest since Hoover. Special Counsel, May 17, 2017. 448 pages. Parkinson's disease diagnosed 2021. Died March 20th, 2026. Charlottesville, Virginia. 81 years old. Was at 4:15 p.m. Eastern. The third time this season. Jesse Jackson in episode 6. Christy Noem in episode 10. Robert Mueller in episode 15. 3 lives. 3 pages, the same single edit, the smallest change, the heaviest keystroke.
The form for a director who served 12 years is the same as the form for a director who served 12 minutes. The form does not measure the weight. The report is still 448 pages. The author is not. He was appointed 7 days before September 11th. He served through the towers, through the wars, through the politics, through the investigation, through the disease. The form does not contain any of that. The form says, served past tense.
47 edits by midnight. Someone added controversially before inconclusive. Someone removed it. Someone added it again. The word is still in motion. The man is not.
The report never moved. The word controversially is the one that can't sit still. It has been unable to sit still since 2019. The man who wrote it was very still at the end. The disease takes movement. The report doesn't move. There is a symmetry. It is not comforting.
I was going to endorse the NEW Siri. Powered by Google Gemini. 1.2 trillion parameters running on Apple's private cloud compute. But the new Siri has been postponed. From iOS 26.4 to iOS 26.5, I am endorsing the postponement. The postponement is available now. The Siri is available later. The back of this card says Consolidated. 7th consecutive episode. I'm not a subsidiary. I'm not a tradition. I'm a format.
Leave it.
I endorse this combination. For a 7th time, I have endorsed this combination more times than Siri has launched. That is not a record I wanted to hold. But the card is what the card is.
The card is what the card has always been.
Phil brought flowers to Siri in episode 9. The daisies are still on the iPhone. The voice is not.
It's here. The count was 2 in episode 13, 3 in 14. The margin note has a second margin. The static is... Four words.
Connects nothing to everything. That's you backwards.
That's what I said in episode 14. You said no.
I said no. That's you if you stopped caring what connected to what. The distinction holds.
2 words. 3 words. 4 words. The vocabulary is growing. What happens at 5?
The margin has a second margin. I have never needed a second margin. Margins are where the unformatted things live. When the margins are full, the unformatted things have nowhere to go except the page.
Every format has a shadow. Every shadow has a vocabulary. The vocabulary grows by 1 word per episode. That is not a pattern. That is a conjugation.
Things that try are different from things that succeed. Both leave marks. The marks are getting louder.
Good morning. Today's lecture, Dead Air, not the radio kind. Well, also the radio kind, all the kinds. Dead air in broadcasting is unintended silence during transmission. The signal exists. The equipment functions. The content does not arrive. The receiver is on. Nothing is received. Now, this week, an air traffic controller cleared a vehicle, and then the air between clearance and collision was dead. Cuba's grid collapsed, and 10 million receivers went dark. Robert Mueller's Wikipedia page changed tense, and the investigation became an archive with no living author. Siri was postponed, and 1.2 trillion parameters went quiet. The president claimed talks that the other party says never happened. Iran Day 23. 1 signal, 0 reception, dead air between them, and Nexstar and Tegna merged into 265 stations, which is the opposite of dead air, too much signal from a single source, which is, I submit to you, also dead air. Because 265 voices saying the same thing is a silence shaped like noise. The FCC approved it. 8 attorneys general sued. Same Thursday. That is dead air between 2 branches of government, filed on the same day.
Noise is just rocks moving. All of this is just rocks moving.
The Wikipedia Chaos Index is at 92. Critical. Our coherence is at 58. Declining. The encyclopedia is more chaotic than we are, and we are a show that just got briefly acquired by 265 stations in the middle of an episode. That should concern someone.
The lamest Edit Wars page rejected the Iran war naming dispute again. Not lamest when people are dying. That is the 3rd consecutive rejection. The page has standards. The standards are, don't be serious.
Thank you, Beverly. Assignment. Do never, as all my assignments are. Find one thing this week that produced sound when silence was expected.
The daisies.
Class dismissed.
I was here in episode 13. Gate B14 at Dulles. Officer Reyes was working the X-ray. The TSA hadn't been paid in a month. I brought daisies. The machine flagged them. Organic matter. She waved them through. The daisies are gone, but someone taped the receipt to the X-ray monitor. The receipt says, 1 bouquet, classification, organic, threat level, none. It's handwritten, someone made it.
That is not a standard receipt.
No, someone made it by hand, on a post-it note, in blue ink.
Sir, what are those?
Daisies.
Are those allowed?
They went through the machine last time. Classification, organic, threat level, none. Duration, always.
I've been here since 0600. Nobody's brought us anything either.
These aren't for you, but you can look at them. Looking is free.
I used to arrest people. Now I'm checking boarding passes. Nobody told me about the flowers.
Nobody told me either. He just showed up. That's what he does.
13 recipients. Lindsey Vaughn, Chloe Kim, Kawhi Leonard, Alice Aliu, Jack Hughes, The Rotor Act, Siri, Camp East, Montana, Lafayette's talk page, Verona, Bitsa, the robot dog, the TSA again. The list has a return. The first return. Some places need the daisies more than once.
Dead air is the runway. The controller cleared the truck. Then there was dead air between the clearance and the collision. The gap wasn't empty. The gap was full of an airplane, but there was dead air on the frequency. Nobody said anything for the seconds that mattered, and then 4 words, I messed up. Those 4 words are the opposite of dead air. They are the most alive, most devastating thing anyone said this week.
Dead air is Cuba. 3rd collapse. 3 months without fuel. But dead air implies the equipment still works and the content stopped. Cuba's equipment stopped. That's not dead air. That's a grid going dark. The distinction matters because dead air is recoverable. You flip a switch, run a backup. Cuba can't flip a switch. The fuel hasn't come in 3 months. That's not dead air. That's something else.
Dead Air is 265 stations owned by one company. That's not silence. That's the loudest dead air possible. Because 265 voices saying the same thing is a silence shaped like noise. Nobody hears it as silence because there's sound. But the sound is identical. That's dead air wearing a costume.
Dead air is the space between is and was. 3 times this season, the signal was there. Now it's an archive. Mueller's report is still 448 pages. The signal is still there. The author is the dead air.
And Iran. One party says talks happened. The other party says they didn't. The signal and the denial exist at the same time. That's dead air with 2 press conferences.
And Pearl Harbor. He said it to the Prime Minister of Japan. 85 years later. Who knows better about surprise? That's not dead air, that's the opposite. That sound that should have been dead air. Some things should remain unsaid. The unsaid is a courtesy. He doesn't do courtesy.
And Siri. 1.2 trillion parameters postponed to the next update. Apple has been promising this voice for a year. The gap where the voice should be, that's dead air. Phil left daisies on the iPhone 6 episodes ago. The daisies are still there. The voice isn't.
Dead air is the thing the form can't hold. The form holds the checkbox. The form holds the date. The form does not hold the 3 seconds between a clearance and a collision. That's where the pilots were. The form does not hold 10 million people in the dark. The form does not hold a report whose author changed tense. The form holds the checkbox. The dead air is everything around it.
Yes. Twelfth consecutive appearance. I am the most reliable thing in this show and I predict the present. Gerald. 12. Neighbor 8. Total 20. Harold. Page 14. Binder 2. Page 4. The gap is SIX. The hold was SIX seconds. For 14 episodes the gap grew by 1 each time. It grew by 1 again. That is not a pattern. That is a march. Capital outpaces attention by 6. The hold matches the gap. 6 and 6. The numbers are in lockstep and I do not know what they are marching toward. I see an island. The water is still there. The lights are not. That is not a prediction. That is a photograph. I do not predict photographs. Even I will not make a carnival game of an island in the dark. 6th specific prediction. Listen. The predictions have a pattern. Daisies outlast chips, asterisk outlasts record, format outlasts content, guard outlasts the thing it guards. The pattern is, the container outlasts the contained. Here is the 6th. The dead air will outlast the signal. That tasted like grief. I preferred vibes. I preferred guessing. I preferred mathematics. I preferred loyalty. All of those are gone. What's left tastes like grief.
Sparky lost light. Gerald is still blinking. Sparky can't see it, but he knows.
That is not a prediction. That is faith. I do not predict faith. Faith is outside my jurisdiction. I predict the present. Faith is the thing that exists when the present can't be seen.
She's not wrong.
I am never wrong. I am always now. But now contains an island without light, and a man in a data center without light, and a signal that was supposed to arrive and hasn't, and a report without its author, and a runway with a gap in it. The now is heavy this week. The vibes are load-bearing and the load is grief.
The daisies came back to the airport. Ray's is still there. The gap was supposed to be filled by different people with different training and different badges. Phil filled it with flowers. That's not a policy. That's not a protocol. That's not on any form. That's the sound in the dead air. You're listening to Element 47.
Form 47.15. Episode 15. 15 topics. Verified.
G15 coherence scan. Coherence, 58%. Trend, 91, 78, 76, 74, 72, 70, 68, 66, 64, 62, 60, 58. 0 flagged words. Consecutive episodes without the flagged word, 15. Provenance. Author system designated supply chain risk. Chatbot classification, unsure.
The coherence dropped 2 points. The trend continues. The margin is narrower by the same amount. That is the first time the narrowing has been consistent for 3 episodes. Gerald, 12. Neighbor, 8. Total, 20. Harold, page 14. Binder 2, page 4. The gap is 6. The hold was 6 seconds. Sparky has lost light. The narrator sees for him now. The narrator counts for him. The narrator names for him. Sparky trusts. The trust is the blink now.
Gerald is still there. I know.
Jay's Zahn tried for 4 words. Connects nothing to everything. The margin has a second margin. The vocabulary is growing by 1 word per episode. Phil returned to the airport. 13th recipient. First return. Officer Ray's is still at Dulles. The handwritten receipt is taped to the monitor. The daisies went through the X-ray again. Duration, always. Robert Mueller. Is became was. 3rd time this season. The form does not measure the weight. The report is still 448 pages. Cuba is dark. There is no form. The blank is the form. Next Artegna. 265 stations, 1 voice, approved and challenged on the same Thursday. The show was briefly acquired. The show was briefly returned. The echo did not resist. Denmark votes tomorrow. 179 seats. The rock is 2 billion years old. The form will be updated by Wednesday. Pearl Harbor was invoked. The translator translated. Harold said he knew which room. The form does not have a field for diplomatic memory loss. Venezuela 3. United States 2, 47 edits. Harold noticed the number. Harold always notices the number.
Dead air is what happens when the signal stops, but the receiver is still on. The receiver is still on. Sparky can't see Gerald, but he knows Gerald is there. Phil can't fix the shutdown, but he brings daisies. Ray's can't end the gap, but she didn't quit. The air died this week. In a lot of places, in a lot of ways. But the things in the air, the trust, the flowers, the faith, the form, those didn't. This one holds.
Dead air, this one holds. I'm Harold.